Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's Max, and in today's video we're going to talk you through a lap around the Daytona road course. For those of you who know me, I do this quite rarely, but I think this week is extremely important. We have the Daytona 24 coming up, and you might be interested in the LMP2, and if you want to do it, take a look at this. It was not a perfect lap that I did there. I had two minor errors in it, but it was a decent one, and I thought I'd share it. This was on full tank endurance. No, it was European Sprint Series practice server with, what do we have, 23 degrees Celsius. So we're good. Just take a look at the lap, and if you like the video, hit the like button. And without further ado, here's the lap. Okay, so let's start with the uncommentated lap out of my cockpit perspective. I'm gonna leave the infos here so you can take a look at my inputs that I do while I drive around the truck. So this was the uncommentated lap around Daytona in the LMP2. You can see this is a 134.9, which under these conditions, it's 22-degree track Celsius on an official Endurance Sprint Series server. Should be pretty okay. Okay, so let's get into detail. First off, in the oval section, all the time what you want to do is you want to try to get as low towards the apron as possible, but don't touch the the yellow line, because as soon as you do it, it will unsettle the car, so that's not something you would like to do. So you see, starting from the start-finish straight, I track out towards the outside, and as soon as I hit like this pillar here, that's the same point for me and the ultra wide I have. If I go to the cockpit, it disappears here. Like, I don't see it here anymore. Like, if I go back 1 or 2 frames, I see it again. I don't see it here. The thing is, also on the left-hand side, the cones that are there will start to hit your A pillar, and that's exactly the moment where I hit the brakes. So, going back to the chase cam, if it lets me. I try to track out around the white line that is here. That's where I hit the brakes pretty hard initially. I go to probably 70% and decrease it slightly. And as soon as I realize that my front outer tire, the outside loaded tire actually, is gripping, I start lifting off the brake immediately. I don't brake at all, because I then know I have the rotation in the car. And that's where the point where I try to hit the gas again. And you have to try make use of the maximum throttle capability that you have. So I hit 100%, realized traction control was kicking in. Hear the sounds. It was a bit too early. Hear the sounds. And as soon as I heard that the traction control was hitting in, and I realized, oh, the rear is stepping out a little bit and the traction control needs to actually work, I decreased the throttle a little bit and went down to like 80%. And as soon as I realized, okay, the car settled again, I got out flat again. This is really important. You need to have good exits on this one. And as we are running low downforce packages, we will have to struggle with a moving rear quite a lot in this race. So then we go out flat over the curb, go out the most possible way you have, and then there's two things you can do, especially in the beginning of the race. There is this pillar on the left hand side which you can take as a reference. I don't do it because like I don't see that on my peripheral view because it's like way on the outside. What I do though is like which you won't see, there's the 100-meter board on the right hand side, and as soon as that hits roughly the end of the monitor, I start braking. And you see I'm not actually braking. I try to get the car into a straight line so that I can load the tires both at the same time equivalently. And that's what I do here. I try to get the car straight first and my steering wheel is straight, and then I hit the brakes. Hit it pretty hard, around 70%-ish, going down really quick. Trail braking is a thing with this car, so we have to make sure this works. This is a nut rubber in track. That's something you really have to take into consideration. Once the race goes on and we have the 24-hour race, the track will rubber in and you can trail brake way, way better. By the way, that's what I wanted to mention here too. The mark here is a little bit difficult, but as soon as I said you have the A pillar on the left-hand side here, this pillar post for the lights that are there, or the 100-meter board, you have to find your sweet spot. But as soon as the grip grips in, you know, like we have the tarmac, the surface gripping in, and we see actual visually there is the spot where the rubber starts gripping in, that's where you want to brake. That's your braking point later on in the race. Then, yeah, as I said, pretty hard braking, steering into the corner, trying to load the tire or unload the tire brake-wise, but then loading the tire again while going into the corner, putting steering force into it. Was not ideal. I had to correct a little bit and throttle up a bit because otherwise I would have run into the gravel here because I was a little bit too slow. So my braking point was a little bit too early. This is obviously something you do not want to have. Then go maximum in here, hit the throttle. You see it oversteers a little bit. Doesn't matter, you have plenty of space on the outside. Go all to the right, all to the left, over the curb, going towards the left hand side. And now it's important to not brake too late. Like for me, you see it here already, as soon as I have the steering wheel straight, I start braking. Like I don't go with the cones or anything. It's basically, oh, that was the wrong one. It's basically as soon as I have the steering wheel straight, I start braking. And this is a pretty hard braking zone. You have to brake at a maximum of 80 to 85% here initially to load up the fronts, to load up the tires at the front, and then decrease it slightly. And you will realize the rear is trying to step out. And if you are like 5 meters too late on the brake at this point, you will just spin because we have low downforce package, the car is loose, so you need to, the car has to use a lot of load. Let's put it other way, you have to try and using the maximum amount of load that you can get through the tires with the low downforce package. And that's a huge difference to the normal using high downforce packages we have. That's why it's all a little bit slippery here and there. And yeah, you lose the brake as soon as you start realizing the front left tire is gripping. Oh, did I do the same thing here? Yeah, I had to accelerate here too. So this was not a perfect lap, to be fair. This was not a really perfect lap. It was fast though, but it was not really perfectly driven. Technical wise, because that's something you don't want to have. Like normally you don't want to overcorrect by going on throttle again. Then steering in, going from the outside tire, you see this rubbered in area here. That's where you want to be. That's exactly the line you want to drive. And if you do it correct, you have like two apexes, one here and another one here. Getting on the throttle as early as possible. For the left-hander turn 6, that is, exactly that point here is the braking spot. Nothing to do about. You don't use the brakes ever so much. You increase it pretty fast to around 70%, decrease it slightly ever so much, and as soon as you start rotating in, decrease the brake pressure more to like 20%. Then going into the corner, you can cut this a little bit, which gives you can see it, it gives you a little bit of a bump. And that you can also see that it helps rotating the car through the corner. So that's what you want to do. That's actually intentional. Like I do this every lap. I drive through this little hole that is there just beyond the curb, because that gives me the extra rotation I need. Going on throttle pretty early, and now comes the key location for the oval section, because you have to have a good exit here. You really can compromise the entry to this corner. Like you don't need to brake hyper late here. It's better to brake early and then compromise the entry for a good exit. Then you can go on the throttle early, hang it to 60-65% as soon as until like you realize the car settles in. And once the car settled in, you go flat. And you see there's no overcorrection, no oversteer or anything. So this pretty much helps. I will accelerate the oval a little bit because that's not so much of an interest. If you want to fuel save, for whatever reason, maybe you need to do it to extend to a lap to not make the extra stop or whatever, this is the spot you want to do. Clutch out at the 3 board or the 250, whatever amount it is that you need to save, clutch out at 250. Because you won't lose a lot of time here. It's maybe a tenth or so that you lose, but you gain like 0.0 or something. If you go flat, go all the way until like between this yellow mark and the 100 meter board. And actually, you don't need to use the brakes pretty much here. It's like 60-70%ish. Hold it a little bit, and as soon as you hit the 1 meter board, you start steering into the corner, hold the brakes. This is extremely important. You have to hold your brakes all the time because you have a weight transfer from left to right. Or actually, the transfers from right to left. But as you have this weight transfer, you need to hold your brakes, shift down to 3rd gear, clip the curbs fully as much as possible as you can, and then in the middle of the corner, you should hit the throttle again. And if it works fine, this was pretty okay. I hit 185. In perfect cases, I hit 190 in the middle of the corner. Then you can just go flat over both bumps. This is not an off-track, by the way. Off-track because I hit the curb with the inside tire. Like as soon as you go over the curb with the tire, it's an off-track. I didn't do it, so it's not an off-track. And then you just go flat until the start-finish line. And that basically is a lap around it. It was a 134.9, as I mentioned earlier. Yeah, and I hope this helped you a little bit in improving or getting better or whatever, in just doing better in the Daytona 24.